Today I'm talking with Seph Dietlin. Seph is a certified hypnotherapist, intuitive, and actor. Has been working with his angels with the ability to talk to angels for a number of years now, about 20 years. And so today we're going to talk about how Seph communicates with the angels and how it's not something unique to him. It's something that we all have the ability to do if we can quiet our minds and be able to listen to those subtle energies a little bit deeper. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that, how to strengthen our intuition, but also talk about what the New Earth prophecy that Seph's been talking about for a while, and how we can ready ourselves to move towards this New Earth prophecy. The modalities we can work with, but also the understanding that we're all in the right place. Right? There's this part of the conversation we get to where we talk about higher selves, and if we found that person, that's great. But if we haven't yet, that's also great, because we just haven't learned all the lessons we need to get there. So we're all in the perfect place we need to be, always, all the time. So join us today as we talk about the New Earth prophecy, the modalities we can do for ourselves to help ourselves be ready, but also the space we can hold for all humanity. I hope you get something out of the conversation. We'll see you on the other side. But first, a message from our sponsor. Anamkara is a gorgeous meditation and healing center, offering daily in-person and virtual services to help bring you back to the center of who you truly are. They serve through a collective of practitioners, healers, and teachers, offering daily meditation classes, one-on-one healing sessions, workshops, personal ceremonies, and private events, plus corporate and team training, all with mindfulness at the core. The center itself is located in the heart of downtown Spokane. Every part of it was built, designed, and curated for you to drop into your calm place. They have a large community space for daily meditation classes and workshops, as well as 2 one-on-one healing rooms, a community kitchen to gather for tea, plus a well-stocked apothecary for you to gather all of your self-care and ritual needs. Hannah Talbot, the owner and founder of Anamkara, dreamed of opening this space for years. It is her ultimate manifestation, and she cannot wait to share it with those in the Spokane community, but also through the virtual ethers, wherever you may be. Pop in for a class today. You can follow them on Instagram to book and stay up to date. Check out the website, the full schedule, meet the practitioners, and view all the offerings. Visit them at anamkarahealing.center. Anamkara, may you be nourished and ignited. Our healing journey can be difficult and might feel lonely at times. That's why I love sound baths. When we can get together in a community, we intrinsically support and feel supported by others. And that combined energy can help us go deeper into our own healing journeys. And all you have to do is just lay there for 1 hour and listen to beautiful healing sounds. I'm a sound healing practitioner, and I hold sound baths on a regular basis in the greater Seattle area. You can find my next sound baths on my website at adamrealhealing.com. That's Adam, A-D-A-M, Real, R-I-E-H-L, Healing, H-E-A-L-I-N-G.com. AdamRealHealing.com. Your healing is worth your time. And now an uninterrupted episode with Seph Dietlin. All right. Welcome back to our show. Today I'm sitting across from Seph Dietlin. So Seph was introduced to me by a mutual friend, Yesenia, who owns Life Inc. by B over in Everett. We do a few sound baths out there. And one day I came in to do a sound bath, and Yesenia was like, "You've got to meet this guy named Seph. He talks to angels. He's one of the coolest guys I've met in a while. Seemed like he's right up your alley. He does podcasts, he does talking, he does speaking events. You do podcasts. You should have him on your show." I'm like, "Cool, let's hook it up." Unfortunately, she sent me the information, and I just got busy. I never hit you back. But then she hits me and says, "Hey, Seph's going to be at the sound bath, the next sound bath that you do here." And I'm like, "That's amazing, perfect. Want to meet this guy." And then Seph came in, and so that's how we first met each other, was at that sound bath. And through that initial meeting, for me personally, I was like, okay, cool. I don't know what we're going to do together, but this gentleman and I are going to do something together, whether it's my podcast and we have him on as a guest, or something continuous on the road or down the road. And I still have that feeling. And then we had this conversation before we just started, and you talked about some of the projects you're working on, and it just deepens that feeling of like, cool, I've met somebody that will have some kind of relationship for a while, working together in some capacity. And that warms me, to
Right.
find these beautiful people that you're like, I didn't know I was looking for you. And then we found it, and it's like, oh, cool. Good to know you're there, because I had no idea that I needed you. And so Seph is a man of many talents. He's an actor. He's a certified hypnotherapist, an intuitive, talks to angels. He is just doing work, right? And I've said this before on this show, and I will never not say this, but when I feel and I see people that I think are living to their full potential, that just makes me so joyful, because you're living that actualization moment. You're putting your gifts to that work to help better this planet and better humanity in some kind of way. So before we even get into what you do, how you do, and why you do it, thank you for doing what you do.
And thank you for having me here, and thank you for doing what you do as well.
Thank you. I'm so honored. In my digging of who you are and what you do, just like your online stuff, it's just amazing how many offerings that you have, and how much travel you do, and how much you put yourself out there to help and to share information. Different platforms that you work on, different modalities as far as writing or speaking or tarot decks that you've created. It seems like you've just put it all out there for humanity. You're just like, this is what I'm going to offer you. And so one of the things that I really want to talk about, and then we'll get into some of the deeper things, is, so you talk to angels, and I've met people that have, and I've have an understanding to my extent of what that means. But to maybe some of our listeners, that might be something completely out of left field. Like, what is that? Is that like a Black Crow song? It's like, yes, it is, but also it's an intuitive thing that we have, right? So can you kind of lay a little bit of groundwork on some of that, some of the angel work that you do, and then we'll kind of dive in from there.
Great. And the way that I would frame this, is specifically for the audience, is so that they can find their moments of communicating with the angels as well. And that's what I'm here to do, is not just to be that person that communicates with the angels, but to be that person that opens the door for you in the audience to be able to speak to your angels as well. Because when the angels first came to me 20 plus years ago, they let me know that my task was going to be to bring them to other people. And that's where the traveling and where all this other stuff comes from. And when I listen to you describe me as an actualized version of being out there, I live in a human body as well. And I don't always get to frame it that way either. Sometimes I feel like, wow, how's this going to happen? Or how's this going to come together? And the angels always come through. And then they remind me that that's the reason why I'm here to teach that. But to give something that the audience can understand, for those of that would love to speak to the angels, I can tell you that you're speaking to them all the time already, but just not aware that you are. And what will happen is that when you become aware of that part inside of you, that you are hearing from your angels, then they can use that portal within you to be able to tell you more, to be able to reveal more, and to be able to give you more and direct guidance. And here's something very practical for you in the audience. We'll hear a voice inside that will speak to us in second person. Something like, you should go send that email. Look behind the closet door for your passport. It's sitting there. You'll hear something speak to you in second person, as though someone is speaking to you telepathically. And it happens so naturally already that you don't realize that's your angel speaking to you. And then once you tune into that voice, then they're going to start to give you even more incredible instructions in that. Now, it's funny, because as I'm talking about them, I just saw one to the right of me that wanted to show up and let us know that they are here. And just so you know what they look like, they don't look like Hollywood special effects.
White robes and wings and
white robes and wings and halos and all that, right? They look like a speck of light.
Okay.
And so if you've ever seen a speck of light out of the corner of your eye, guess who that is? That's one of your angels. Especially if it's after something that was revealed within you by you. So in other words, that's their way of saying, that was a message from us.
Wow. And when you say that second person, I've heard that for so many years and rationalized it as a thought that I shouldn't listen to. It's like, I don't have time for that. Like, get out of my head. That's not a thought I have time for. But the more I started to meditate, right, that was my first kind of step into finding out who I was, and listening to myself was meditation and yoga. And through those moments, those voices started to get louder, and it wasn't, I couldn't rationalize it anymore. I couldn't be like, oh, that was just a thought, or that was just a thing. There was like directionality to it. You should do this, go and do that. And that's never the way I've heard myself talk to myself. But the more I sat and the more I, listened to those subtle energies and quieted my body down, not necessarily the louder, but it was the clearer those voices came in. And it started to make a little more sense that that's something, somebody, something, some entity, whatever it is, speaking to me. And how long have I been ignoring that voice? And so I went through that self-loathing phase that, humans do. We create stories like, oh, why couldn't I have done this in my 20s? Why did I just drink my life away? I could have been listening this whole time. Well, I wasn't ready then. I needed to go through the shit I had to go through. I had to, blow up relationships and do terrible things to my body and other people to understand, like, this is the path that I now need to walk, because that other path I've proven time and time again is toxic and not working.
Right. Well, this is one of the reasons that I actually teach people how to communicate with their angels. And actually, believe it or not, the hardest part about selling that is that we don't believe in magic.
Right.
So that's the most interesting aspect of this, is because magic is real. We are designed to have access to it. And our angels aren't just here for that moment we're lying unconscious from a car crash, or when we can't find our car keys and they tell them, look inside the drawer next to the refrigerator.
Right.
They're not just here for those emergency situations. They're here to guide us throughout our entire life. They were with us when we created our book of life, our Akashic record in the Akashic library, and designed the life that we were here to live. And they're supposed to be our remote guides to make sure that we understand what we created before we came here, because we forgot.
Yeah.
And the other aspect of that is that they help us with all of the practical things that we have to do. An example of which is that there was a point in between when I was asked to walk away from auditioning as an actor in Hollywood, and I was in this sort of middle ground, and I knew something was shifting, because I was intuitively guided to go to Florida to go teach angel work. And while I was there, someone was borrowing my car, and they were in an accident. The car got totaled.
Oh.
And the minute that I discovered that, I was like, wow, something amazing is shifting. And I was with a friend of mine from New York, and she said, I am so surprised that you aren't freaked out right now. And I said, well, I was guided to be here to teach angel work. I was guided by the angels to loan that car to the friend. So whatever's happening here is a shift, and I'm just going to be calm and allow it to happen. Well, ultimately, what ended up happening in this case, and this is one of many cases of being practically guided by the angels, is that they revealed to me that I should go and get a job selling cars for a little while.
Okay.
And they gave me a specific dealership and a specific brand. And I was then guided to call a friend of mine and reveal my idea. She happened to know the sales manager of that dealership, of that brand, and that's how I got there. So I say to people when I invite them to learn how to communicate with the angels with me, is that how would you like to find a job that way, instead of putting out 100 resumes and getting 50 interviews and really wasting your time?
Right.
But that's one example of what the angels can do with us. They'll help us manifest what we need. And then they'll also keep us out of fear, because the world has been pumped full of fear in the last few years.
Most definitely.
And having an opportunity to be connected to the angels gives us an opportunity to be exempt from that, which is amazing, because then we can create from that space and we can keep connected and have a joyful perspective about what's to come.
Yeah. It's almost like when you can turn that human side off of like, no, I need to do this. This is my thing. And you turn that off and let the divine kind of step in. It almost like creates this like internal gnosis of like you're just moving in the right direction. And when there's this internal knowing that nobody can take away from you because of the experiences you've had and you know, it's all very personal to you, there's almost like this calmness of like, it doesn't matter what happens because it's all supposed to happen, right?
Correct.
The perceived good, the perceived bad, the perceived indifferences, whatever it is, it's all it's all part of that, you know. And we just if today it feels kind of chaotic, we have no idea how tomorrow is going to feel. Tomorrow, everything might make sense. Tomorrow might be the most chaotic day that was more chaotic than the previous day, right? But we're with it. We're open ourselves up to it. One of the things you mentioned earlier about magic too, because that's one of the things that I work with my clients a lot on, and they're like, "What is this magic shit you're doing?" You know, it's like, okay, energy work, whatever. But the top grossing entertainment in the world is magic related, right? There's the Avengers movies that everybody has a superpower of some sort. There's the Harry Potter movies. Everybody's got like magic in some sort going on. The Lord of the Rings trilogies are all these entertainment things that we follow are revolved around magic. And I think it's because we seek it so deeply because we know we're magical. We've just forgotten that now all of our entertainment goes into magic, but we still dismiss it as something. No, 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 no. That's just Hollywood or that's just books. We can't do that shit. No, you can't. Right? It's just an atrophied muscle. We've weakened that muscle now. And I think for me personally, the magic that I started to feel inside myself started with intuition and just strengthening that muscle of listening to myself, listening to my body, knowing that my head is, yes, the head is smart. We'll give it that, right? But the head doesn't hold all the consciousness. The body is way smarter than my head will ever be when it comes to the consciousness. But in my head, I was always a thinker, thinker, thinker. So it's like switching that idea and getting back into our bodies and having these modalities to really help us get back into our bodies.
Yes. Well, first of all, one of the great things about being able to communicate with the angels is that they're extremely insightful. And they can reveal things that you don't need a scientist to reveal to you or to read a book to reveal to you. They can reveal insights that really help you to become the most powerful version of yourself. One of the things along the way, which introduced me to hypnotherapy, is the whole idea that the human experience is a combination of our multidimensional or quantum level of being, and then to mix that with our human intelligence, which is a very linear way of being. Now, the two are completely opposite, but we're meant to allow them to work together, which is why our optimum state is that heart and mind cohesion, that left and right hemisyncing, which of course is what you do when you do the sound healing, is you bring in a sound that causes the brain to go into syncing up the left and right hemispheres. And when people leave a sound healing session, they're like, oh, I feel so good. Well, the reason you feel so good is because the left brain was forced out of the driver's seat.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is then when we start to see those two constructs for what they are and realize that the part of us that's capable of creating magic is our quantum self, then we want that to be in the driver's seat as much as it possibly can. And because we want that to be in the driver's seat as much as we possibly can, we begin to evolve. We begin to do this journey of discovery. We begin to meet other like minds. And I use the word mind because it's actually both minds. We are like minds in that we're very well developed consciously and very intelligent too. A lot of times when people take their spiritual journey, one of the biggest challenges that they're going to have is to fight the linear nature of their human mind. And when we learn to surrender that and understand what it is, one of the things that the angels revealed to me that I found very helpful is they said, don't expect your linear mind to become nonlinear all of a sudden. So the more evolved you become, you may end up experiencing a heightened state of fear or anxiety or whatever, because the linear mind is like, wait, remember me?
Oh, it's so interesting.
Yes. So the linear mind is always going to be linear.
Mm.
And as we evolve, somehow or another, we want that linear mind to become nonlinear and to play with the quantum mind, but it's always going to be linear.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's not to be judged, but it's part of actually the design of the human experience, which is being a multidimensional being in a linear experience because it's fun.
Yeah. So with that in mind, and I've asked this question to a few people, but just personal opinion, because we are humans, right? We're incarnated in this human existence to learn, right? Whatever it is we're supposed to learn, right? But I heard somebody talking about this a while back, and they had a really good, just an interesting point. You know, I love when people ask questions I haven't asked or thought of, right? Seeking answers that I never sought. And this person said, basically, okay, so we spend all this time. There's this, idea that we can spend time in our spiritual selves, right, and to find clarity and then to ascend, right. We move into that next realm. He's like, but we're humans. We're supposed to be humans here in this realm. Like maybe we understand, we pull the veil back to an understanding that we are energetic beings and that we are supposed to be here, but we're still supposed to be here. So like spending all this time meditating and praying and all these things to reach the divine, which we already know that we're connected to, why aren't we enjoying Earth in the human experience as far as like going out and like creating relationships and seeing the beauty of the Earth and all this stuff? And again, it just made me think, I'm like, that's a really interesting point, and I don't know if like obviously everybody's journey is different and it's unique to them and what they need to learn in this life. But, with that idea, like, are we shortchanging the human experience by trying to get back to the divine, where we came from, but we're supposed to be here to have this experience?
The way that I would answer that is that this experience does have a purpose. And even the dark side of this reality actually does have a divinely appointed purpose. So one of the things that the angels have pointed out is that let's say, angels that work the dark team, they were actually created by the divine because part of this experience is the duality. And that doesn't mean we're going to join their team,
Right.
but it also means that our antidote to make ourselves to give ourselves an opportunity to transcend the limitation of the darkness is through love. And that's a discovery of love. And right now, especially where we're going through these interesting times where we're challenged the most, people come to me for like sessions or healing, and they feel guilty because now they eat more chocolate than they used to, or food that they wouldn't have eaten before, lots of other things. And the angels mention that we do love the experience of pleasure, making love to your significant other, in experiencing that intimacy. We're here to do all of that and enjoy that in the body, but also to alchemize energy as we do. And so we're not here to be at war with the darkness. We're here to actually allow that to cause us to ascend or to be the catalyst of our ascension. And when we turn that paradigm around, the angels say that we can actually be in our full awareness, but we are meant to enjoy without making it a false idol, but we are here to enjoy the human experiences that we have.
Yeah.
There are so many beautiful places in nature, and if the divine creator didn't intend for us to enjoy the pleasure of the senses of our eyes, there wouldn't be beautiful waterfalls and mountains and oceans and such. And so when any of those of you in the audience or people who I've worked with, and they come to me and it feels like they've lost control of something like eating or whatever, I tell them that the angels say to start burning scented candles, to get a change of scenery, because you are actually seeking pleasure because your soul wants to experience it in the human body while it's here. And if you're depriving it of that, it's going to find a way to get it. And that's, of course, why they put the chocolate right next to the cash register, because they know you're going to grab it.
That's so interesting, that the pleasure side of that, because, one of the things that I struggle with a lot is the fact that, with religion, we have to go through an intermediary to get in touch with the divine. We can't it's not just an open channel. And, a lot of, theories behind why sex was demonized in religion is because that's our direct channel to the divine, right? We don't need an intermediary. We just had an orgasm and, oh my God, my whole energy centers are opened up now. Right?
Yeah.
And so, like, having that pleasure, because, in our society, we've kind of demonized pleasure a little bit. Like, we don't have we don't have the time, the capacity for it. There's other shit to do. We have work to do. We have kids to raise, whatever the hell it is. Right. But when's the last time we took care of ourselves? And that's that pleasure, right? When I work with my clients, it's like, you need to be selfish, right? Take the definition of selfish out of it, but you need to be with self, right? You need to love yourself, find a way to cherish yourself, take a bath, masturbate, whatever it is, right? But we all need pleasure, right? And the more we asceticize pleasure and try to move away from it or punish ourselves when we find it, it's like, man, there's a balance, right? We can't live in pleasure, right? There is a balance, right? If we just lived in orgasmic pleasure, like if my orgasm lasted like 30 minutes, God, please make it stop. Like I can't uncurl my toes, right? But that 2 minutes or that minute, whatever it is, that's great, because it's like that reset to give us that understanding of, we can now move forward with this other stuff that we're working on, because we know we have pleasure to come back to.
Well, demonizing things that cause us pleasure is a product of our own linear mind. And any structure or construct that wants to demonize it is just an externalization of our own linear mind. And you speak of, religion in that case, it's actually a linear structure, like us having our linear aspect. So there is the way that religion serves us and the planet is that it's an externalization of something that's internal, which is that equalization or that alchemizing between the linear and the nonlinear. And it is true that when we do take the day, for example, I'm from Laguna Beach, California, and there could be months where I actually literally do not see the ocean that I live next to.
Right.
Because guess what? I'm too busy working. Right? And here's this beautiful aspect of nature that some people would die to get to and see. And it's easily accessible. And I could go months without seeing it, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Right? But when I do take the time and do go down there and listen to the waves and the birds and become one with it, all of a sudden I am reset. And I am back in heart and mind cohesion just from that ocean. And I remember one time doing like a live video, and I was going down to the beach in Laguna, and it was a sunset. And I remember making a bit of a sarcastic comment, which is like, well, here's something that I never say, gosh, I shouldn't do this as often as I do, right? Because it was a realization when I went down there. It's like, why do I not do this like almost every day, if not every day?
Right.
And what do people do, for example, when they retire and they have the luxury to do that? They'll go down and look at the sunset every day, and it's just as beautiful every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. We need those remembrances that it doesn't take a lot. There are this moment that we just focus on ourselves, like the sunset, taking my dog for a walk, right? Like I could sit back here in this room that we're in right now for hours, just poring over schedules or guests to book and content to create and all this shit. And then all of a sudden it's like, why am I back here? I could be outside. I could go get some vitamin D. I can get some sun in my body. Go spend some time with my dog for a little bit. But no, I just keep back here, just keep grinding away. But as soon as I do peel myself away, there is just this it's like the veil gets pulled off, and you're like, oh, that's right. We're meant to be human.
Yeah. One of the things that the angels have been reminding us of lately, and I say me as well, is reminding us that our calling that we signed up for to express ourselves and to be was never designed to be all-consuming. So if you are consumed right now with all the tasks that you need to do regarding the calling that you have in order to put it in place to where you think it's finished or done or in the right spot, That's why you keep doing, or we keep doing and doing and doing, and finding ourselves that we're never launched. And oddly, when we start taking the break to go plant seeds, to go down and see the sunset, to go have dinner with a friend or whatever,
Yeah.
when we start doing that, all of a sudden we start to see that our project is exactly where it's supposed to be in its sculpting process.
Wow. I need to remind myself that a lot. Actually, I was pulling tarot cards the other day in my meditation, and laid everything out, sitting in my meditation, and then the question popped in my head that I wanted to ask my guides, and so I put my hands over the cards and I'm like feeling it out. And for me, I was always I try to feel that, like, an energetic push of some sort, right? Something drawing me to a card. And I heard my voice say, it doesn't matter what cards you pick. They're all face down. Your eyes are closed, right? Any card you pick is going to be the exact card that you need. It doesn't matter where it's at in the deck. It doesn't matter what you actually pick, because when you turn that card over, it's the card you need, right? And it was just such a beautiful moment for me of, like, that realization that everything is a possibility, right? Everything is going to be exactly the way it needs. And if I get out of my own way, if my ego stops trying to force my way into the answer, I need a right answer. I need to get the right answer. What's the right answer? There's no right answer. It's the answer that I'm needing, right? And so it was just a beautiful revelatory moment for me, and it kind of, like, spilled over into my life of, like, when I, try to book a guest and that guest doesn't want to, or that doesn't have time. It's like, well, shit, what am I going to do with that week now? And then something just pops up, and then the right thing happens, and it's like, well, that was the perfect person to have right there, and it's like, get out of your own way, create the space for the divine. When we always have everything planned out to the T, we know that we leave no room for the divine to come in and actually speak through us.
And allow things that are meant to happen
Right.
to happen. And it's interesting because eventually we get to the point where we have enough access to our nonlinear being, and that's the part of us that will expand, that there's no such thing as a good thing and a bad thing anymore. It just is.
Yeah.
And so when something difficult happens, then it doesn't necessarily take us down. Now, the linear mind is still going to be linear just as much as, however, the attention or the focus that we give it is going to be whether we suffer or not. Now, interestingly enough, everything that has led us to here has led us to a magical space. So nothing can ever be bad, right?
Right.
And immediately this calls to mind a situation that I experienced that I sometimes remember to not allow the linear mind hijack me in a way where I can't see my path the way the divine sees my path. And that is, I took a trip to New Mexico to do work, and it was all intuition. And all of a sudden I met these amazing people, and it was purely miraculous. And I went through the car wash, and somehow or another my gas filler door looked like it was open or whatever. And I didn't know if maybe someone had messed with my gas tank or something like that. But there was very little gas left in the car. So I decided, you know what? I'm just going to fearlessly drive my car around Albuquerque for about a half an hour, 45 minutes, just burn up the gas. And if my engine starts to sputter, then I'll know something happened. If not, then I know I can sleep well, not letting the linear mind hijack me tonight over the possibility.
Yeah.
So kind of that rip the Band-Aid off moment. So I ended up driving around. It's about 45 minutes, and the car was operating just fine. So I thought, okay, this is great. I'm going to pull into the gas station, grab some water, and grab some gas. When I walked in there, I started speaking to someone, and the conversation just sort of, like when we met, it was this idea that I met someone that I was supposed to know.
Yeah.
And when we left, he asked me, oh, do you have an Instagram or whatever? And he's one of my buddies now.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. And that only could have happened because that gas filler cap was open, and I thought that maybe someone might have messed with my gas tank, but I knew everything was going to be okay anyway, because the angels wouldn't set me up to send me to Albuquerque to do work for them, and only to be in harm's way of someone giving me an expensive repair that I couldn't handle.
Yeah.
And so when we get into that space of peace where we can see things the way that they really are, that they're always lined up in our favor, then we get to live a more peaceful life and then have access to that magic from that higher aspect of ourselves.
I love that. I love that. We got to get out of our own way. Like, understand that, like, everything has a purpose.
Right.
So with that, one of the things you talk about is the New Earth prophecy and how we can kind of prepare ourselves and, you know, what that actually is. So do you mind kind of like talking about what that prophecy kind of looks like from what you've been kind of downloaded or what you've been guided towards?
Yeah. Well, it is apparent to any of us who look at the world around us, we're going to know right away that this world is not in the condition that it was designed by its creator. And we don't live to the full potential as we were designed by our creator. So we know that there is a space of possibilities of being in something completely different. Well, what is that? And I'm fortunate enough that when I started communicating with the angels, the New Earth prophecy started coming directly from them. Afterward, I discovered that there were other people connected to angels and other celestial beings that were getting the same exact message. And that message is that the world in its current condition at the time, and just for fun, we're going to go back to 20 years ago,
Okay.
and we're going to go back to, let's say, post 9/11,
Okay.
when we lived in a world where we were talking about wars that shouldn't exist and an attack on the Trade Center and all of that. And we were talking about living in a world where things that shouldn't happen were happening.
Yeah.
Right? And when we look at that and we look at the poverty in the world and we look at the inequality in the world from a financial standpoint, and you zoom out and take a look at the bigger picture, none of this makes sense, right?
Right.
And we know right away that if what created us created the ecosystem, which is absolutely beautiful and perfect in every way, that if we live in compliance with that energy, which is the quantum field, then what would happen is that we would live in the same state of automatic provision. But we've stepped out of that state. And that's not to say that there's something dark that overpowered that, but that was part of an experience that the divine wanted to have through us, or at least that's the way that that was explained by the angels.
Okay.
So where we're at in this narrative of being the divine in a body with linear intelligence is that we're done learning from being out of our designed state,
Okay.
collectively and individually, which is why we're individually discovering our power to manifest simultaneously and helping each other. And from that, a new world emerges, a new earth emerges. And I've been shown that what that entails is there will be no money system or banking system in its current form.
Okay.
Okay. I was surprised to learn after the angels told me that we wouldn't have it, that the money system in the world is a private corporation, which I didn't know at the time, but they showed me in a dream that someone was siphoning from humanity. And then I learned that the money system is a private corporation, and through pernicious usury on a fiat currency, which is not backed by anything,
Right.
and printed on a printing press, that's a form of usurping from humanity. And I was like, oh, okay. But it was revealed in a dream first,
Okay.
and then I got the rest of that. The aspect of our government construct, which is a body that no longer serves human interests.
Right.
And so that has to peel away to make room for a new system that will be there to serve an evolving human race, people who are conscious. I was told that we will all have a spiritual awakening. We will all have a conscious awakening.
Yeah.
And if someone doesn't like the fluff of that word, then just say you're going in your higher mind. You have a higher intelligence that is capable of so much more, and it is your mind, your brain,
Right.
or a piece of you. You're going to use that and access that from now on. the planet will heal itself, and we will no longer even have disease, because disease in its current form is here to be a catalyst for us to go back to our true design. Well, when we travel back to our true design, we don't need the extent of challenges that we have, because they're literally just pathways and portals to get us back. Before the conversation started here on the podcast, I shared with you that in March of 2020, the angels had come to me and said not to refer to this event as what the media is calling it, which is the P word that rhymes with mandemic.
Right. Yeah.
That instead that was to be called an ascension portal, because the difficulty and challenges that happened from this event actually caused a massive global awakening of consciousness. And at the beginning, they revealed to me that that would happen, that this was an ascension portal is what they call it.
Yeah.
So when I hear people use those other words, I'm like, oh, you mean the ascension portal? Because that's what it is.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's in my personal experience, I've seen that as well. There's been this awareness that's been finally brought up of how just nonsensical this life is that we have. How much we work, how much we put out, how much we have to pay for things. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I think like that ascension moment you just talked about, that was that opportunity for people on a mass scale, not just like, we laid off 10,000 people from Microsoft, and now those 10,000 people have time to figure out life and how they're not happy. No, this was like the entire world was like, okay, take a breath. We're not working for the most part. What the fuck is going on right now?
Right.
Like, I don't like this. I don't see my kids. I don't see my family. I don't have a life. I'm working for somebody else, like, okay, this doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
There's a quantum physics law wrapped up in quantum entanglement that basically talks about the movement of an object. And it's, if you have, let's take a sphere. So if you have a sphere and 1% of that sphere starts moving in a different direction, that's all it takes for the rest of the sphere to be like, okay, cool, we're moving this way now, right?
Yeah.
1%, right? So if you think of our population, 8.5 billion people, 1% of 8.5 billion people is all we need for that movement, right? That shift of consciousness, that shift of something to start pulling everybody else in this direction. And I feel like that's what's happening right now. There's all these prophecies out that indigenous cultures have been talking about for many years now, where this is that time where the ignorance gets blown away, the fear and the grief. We stop feeling that. We start to feel our total balance of humanity. There's one prophecy I love to hear about, and it's since the dawn of time, there's been a bird flying around the universe with just its right wing out, so the masculine wing out, right? And so a one-winged bird is doing its best, but it's failing, right? It's spinning and twirling and doing all this shit. And this year, I think it was 2020, was the first year that the left wing finally unfurled, the feminine wing. And it was the first time that bird can now fly balanced throughout the universe. And now we have the balance, right? And so it's awkward because we've been kind of tail spinning for, centuries, eons. And now we have this balance, and the change, no matter what it is, good, bad, indifferent, right? Change is hard, change is cumbersome, change is awkward, but it's necessary. And so I think like a lot of we're in the midst of that awkwardness of change, and just like we have the ability now to be present with the change, present with the evolution, instead of just being a byproduct of evolution.
Right. Well, when I was younger, I always used to think to myself when I would go fill up my car with gas, why am I paying someone money to put this in my car?
Right.
It is a resource that belongs to the earth. Why am I paying someone else to put this in my car? When you'd say that to someone, they'd say, oh, well, that's because they own this and they did this or whatever. And it was a way of actually seeing things in the way that we've been taught to see them, so that we don't actually look underneath the rock.
Right. Yep.
And now, with all of the recent events that have happened and the pause that that's created, all of a sudden, consciousness is examining all of these things that we've accepted to be normal and true, and has decided to see them in the strangeness that they are and say, oh, we're going to disrupt this.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about 1% of the sphere, then definitely you have that. Now, if you look at young people, you're going to know where this world is going to go, because they're already not a fan of the linear systems that we have. They can't even comply. They don't even have the codes to comply to it or comply with it.
Yeah.
So people judge them as being whatever, lazy or something, but they're not. They're disruptors.
Yeah.
They're here to make sure that the job is finished and that we have the demolition complete so that we can install the new earth, which is actually living to our true design.
Yeah. And I have two kids of my own, 19 and 14, and them as an example of a personal example I see on a regular basis, but also just the kids that I see in life. They don't take this shit, right? They're not understanding of this. It's very confusing to them to work the amount that we work, to drink the amount that we drink, to intoxicate the amount we intoxicate. It just doesn't make sense to these kids. And for me, like, honestly, I think, with the idea of reincarnation, that some of these kids are coming back with a little bit more tuned in than we were when we incarnated. And I think it's on purpose. There's a design to it, because maybe we've gotten to a point of like, okay, we need to give humanity a little bit extra of a push, or maybe this is part of that design where this incarnated generation is coming back with a better understanding to be like, okay, stop. We're moving this way now. We're not going to keep doing this. We're not going to keep creating ways to tie ourselves to our phones and to our work. Let's be with our families. Let's create something. Let's have the freedom to like create something that only you'll love. And
Right.
that's fucking cool too.
And this is how the universe works, and it's great intelligence. And I always am given the context of the image of someone dyes their hair blonde and their hair is actually dark. Now they've stopped dyeing their hair blonde, and you can see the dark roots coming out, coming out, coming out. And eventually that blonde hair is going to be cut out through a haircut, and it'll be the dark hair again, the natural hair again. So the beings that are incarnating in this world are already programmed with the codes for the new earth. So they represent that authenticity coming out of through their growing up process. And as they become adults, that's where the world has to shift in order to be where humanity's at. They're a representation of where humanity will be in 20 years.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman I follow. I think it's Zach Bush, that talks about the population, right? Population, we'll say, quote unquote, crisis, right? With so many people on this planet right now. And he was saying, he's like, the way, another way to look at it, not the way, but another way would be, again, in the idea of reincarnation, there are so many souls that want to be here right now. Like, there's an exciting time on this planet because we're getting out of that age of ignorance. We're moving towards this ascension or this understanding of like, what our consciousness truly is. And so every soul being that's ever existed is like, cool, when's my turn to go to Earth? Well, I want to be a part of this. Like, this is exciting, right? It's weird, it's awkward, but it's going to be fun. There might be a little bit of anarchy going on, but hey, we're all going to come out on the other side. And who doesn't want to be a part of the success of that,
Right.
And I love that. That kind of like gave me a little bit of joy, instead of this, like, where the hell are we going to put 10 billion people in the next 2 years, to like, hey, I hope those extra 2 billion people come here because we're going to need all the help we can get.
Yeah, well, and that is the exciting part of this, because there are going to be new aspects of life that we can't even conceptualize that will be part of that. Imagine when all of this happens and there's a whole different energy here. The anti-aging aspect comes in, the anti-disease, right? There's all kinds of different things that will happen. And even to the point where we'll be able to rise above the current pollutants and toxic aspects of our world.
Yeah.
On my way over here, I passed a 5G tower and I was like, oh, enjoy your lifespan there,
Right.
But we're going to find new ways. And that includes being able to communicate and create technologies, or to have access to technology that is currently, let's say, suppressed. But we would have access to technology that really works with the quantum field and with the planet instead of against it.
I love that. Yeah, there's so much technology out there that's kind of like counterintuitive to what we're wanting. But with the what we started with intuition, a lot of times what I'm thinking is like we have these cumbersome devices in our hands all the time, but we're all telepathic also. Like, so
Right.
let's strengthen that muscle so we don't have to be tied to these devices. I could just walk by Seph and be like, oh yeah, hey, great joke, bud.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, that is true. Yeah, that's funny. So that is one of the things that the angel started revealing as part of the New Earth prophecy is that from that we will be telepathic, we will be teleporting. We won't even need airplanes
Beautiful.
because we'll be able to do that. And we already know that it's possible because we can conceive it.
Right. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And it wouldn't necessarily be something that's possible if it wasn't something that we could conceive because the two are interrelated. And the perfected form of everything is ultimately where we're going to, which is perfect health. And we would only be on this plane for as long as we want to.
Okay.
Now, it's interesting because I've had the opportunity to astral travel into, let's say, simultaneous dimensions. And there are some dimensions where when your soul is, let's say, occupying the body that's in that dimension, it's a higher vibrating one, that this sort of vehicle starts to form in your home. And you know it's time to go on a great journey. So from here, we see death as an ending instead of the beginning of a new journey, which is what it is. But in higher vibrating dimensions, they know when it's coming. And it's sort of like when you go on a vacation and it's kind of like, ooh, where am I going? And we don't prepare to miss the people that we've loved in this dimension because we know that they're going to catch up with us in the next reality as well, and we're going to see them there. And we understand that that's how it works, and that's the adventure of this whole thing.
Wow. There's a calmness that just came over me with that, with that explanation. And that it just, everybody's on their own journey, right? And you know that you'll see that being, that energy again. And there's like, cause you're intertwined, right? But in this human realm, like my mom just passed away in September, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Very sad, right? She died of cancer. She fought. And God, I miss her all the time, right? But at the same time, like that's the human side of me. There's like this humanistic side of me that, yes, miss your mom, right? She loved you. You were birthed by her. She loved you, dearly for the 42 years you were alive. But the energetic side of me is like, hey, your mom's right next to you. Right? All the time. Like I sit down in meditation, I hear my mom, I feel my mom, I sense my mom. She's in my medicine bag that I work with clients on, like all this stuff, like she's always with me. And so it's like that instinctive human side that pulls me towards that, like lamenting, missing, sadness, grief. But there's also this like gentle, like rise back, push over to the other side from my guides and from the, the humanity that's within me that says, but it's all perfect. It's all exactly the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. It's interesting because not everything that's here is the limitation of what is here. And what I mean by that is that there are other civilizations that are higher vibrating that are occupying the same space that we call planet Earth, but we aren't able to see them because they exist in a higher frequency. And so we're going to be reunited with these people as well. Now, it's interesting because in part of some astral journeys that I've taken, I accidentally discovered this civilization that's an underwater civilization that lives off the coast of Hawaii.
Okay.
And much like the people of Telos that live underneath Mount Shasta, okay, they live in the ocean. And when I connected with them, they said, humans will never find us because of frequency. So we can live here, and we don't have the fear that humans will invade our world or pollute our world or whatever. So even if in our dimension there's litter or garbage in that area of the ocean, in their dimension, it's not there.
Wow.
Okay? So they were sharing with me how they are an offshoot of Lemuria, and they were sharing with me how being at that frequency was a way of living. And when I was there with them, I could feel what it was going to feel like with the shift, which is that sort of oppression that gets lifted off your shoulders. And you never feel that oppression, like I need to go work, I need to go make money.
Right.
I need to, because the world provides for us. We don't need money to get the food that the world provides for us or the shelter that the world provides for us.
Yeah.
So they welcomed me into that world. And I thought, well, this is very interesting to have discovered these people. And would you know it, that within 3 months of discovering that, I've come across 5 highly in tune people who have also discovered this civilization as well.
Yeah.
One of them was as recent as yesterday. I had a conversation with someone who I had just met, and I'm going to Hawaii in a couple weeks, and I feel that connecting with that civilization is part of the reason why I got intuitively drawn to go there. And she said that she went diving off of this beach with a crystal. Mm-hmm. And the minute that she dove in, she saw this civilization right there. And of course, my body got chills because it was like, oh, wow, they are there. Mm. So we're going to be meeting some of our other spiritual brothers and sisters that are occupying the planet, mm-hmm. that don't live our human experience in our system.
I love that. One of the first things I remember reading that confused me and made me like, no, this is dumb. And I was in high school, so I was, I appreciate my ignorance from back then. But was the theory that the Mayans had ascended to an energetic level, right? Because there was always the mystery: what happened to Mayans? What happened to the Mayans? They just disappeared one day. And I heard one of those theories of like, yeah, they reached a different level of consciousness, their vibration changed, and they don't need their human bodies anymore, but they're still here, they're just in a different realm. And I'm like, that's bullshit. That's cool, good job, stoner guy that thought of that. But but I feel that on a deep level, like, and through my spiritual journey, like that's something I've kind of come back to a couple times. One, to just appreciate how ignorant I used to be, and how there's still a lot of ignorance around me, but we've moved. There's a shift. But two, it's one of those like Easter eggs that was planted when I was very young. Of like, hey, you're gonna think this is dumb and ignorant, but when you get older and you get a little bit of understanding, this is going to be like an impetus for what you're doing and what you're looking for. And I always just kind of get drawn back to that. And so I love the explanation that you just had, because there's like this feeling, like when we take pictures and we see an orb, right? And, there's like this same green orb in the same, by the same person in a dozen different pictures. There might be something there, there's all these different, like, there's things that happen around us that, again, we can rationalize and we can explain. But when we stop rationalizing with our human brain and just feel it and just embrace what that could be, I feel, for me personally, my journey, it's opened up everything, right? It opened up all the different portals.
I've always wondered how the linear mind could convince us to automatically close ourselves off to something that we don't understand yet. And always think that something's not possible. Now, interestingly enough, that's part of the cycle that we're in of ascension, which is because we're becoming less linear beings, and because we're ascending consciously, we are seeing things at a non-linear level. The ability to be open to what's going on around us is a byproduct of that, because the linear mind is no longer in the way to try to hold on to the construct that it makes to be real.
Interesting.
And one of the pieces of information I've come across recently is the whole theory of the old buildings, the marble buildings all around the world, that there was some form of reset and a more evolved society that existed before ours that somehow or another got reset through the mud floods. And if you've ever marveled at these beautiful buildings that were allegedly built in the 17 or 1800s, right? Mm-hmm. And you think this was a time when we were horse and buggy and had no electricity.
Right.
And these amazing buildings that we can't build anymore. So following that information, it does cause one to like look and say, that does beg the question, and I'm open to new information. Maybe it doesn't have to be the information that's presented here, right, but I am open to discover that this might not be exactly what we were told that it was.
Right.
And we're in that space where we're questioning everything, and that's going to be that place where the old that doesn't serve us is going to collapse, is because right now the acceleration of those questions, because none of these alternate narratives actually add up with each other.
Not at all. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that they're not authentic. I'm not saying that, but it is interesting because all of a sudden these new ideas that have some actual legitimate questions behind them are coming up. Like, where did these buildings come from then?
Right.
That's actually a legitimate question.
Yep.
So it takes me back to the space where this is a hologram, perhaps, and that it didn't exist until we entered into it. And that's where the angels have taken me with that, instead of actually worrying about what is history and what history of it is available or true or meant to actually identify us with this dimension, that perhaps this is just a simulation, and the moment that we walked into it, whenever that is when it actually began.
Yeah. There's a guy named Graham Hancock that's been writing books since the 90s. He's an investigative journalist. He's not an archaeologist by any means, but he writes a lot about the misunderstanding of how old civilization is. And he's got a new Netflix docuseries called Ancient Apocalypse. Great, great stuff. But basically, he questions, like you said, like, okay, so we think this is that old, but I found evidence to say it's like probably 10,000 years older than that. And when he brings this evidence to archaeologists, they're like, get fucked. You're dumb. Don't ask those questions. We know what we're talking about. You don't know what you're doing. It's like, well, the fact you won't even entertain the question shows me that you don't know what you're doing, right?
Right.
And so he's found all these different instances where, like you said, and one of the points that he makes too is like take something like Machu Picchu, right? Machu Picchu, beautiful area in Peru, right? And it's this very holy site, and the archaeologists say we've dated it to this point, right? But when you get deeper into that area, you start to find things built on top of things that were built there already. And so the point that he made was, did you build the house that you live in? No, somebody else did. You've moved in, you've modified it to fit what you need. Why don't you think other humans did that beforehand, right? Do you think like the Mayans were just like, oh, cool, we're just going to set up shop right here? Maybe the Mayans came upon somebody else's older civilization that we have no idea of, and then added on to what they have, and now we see that as the creation of the Mayans, right? I love that, right? And there's so much evidence and information that he's found that backs his idea up that things are much older than we think. And that adds the layer of magic to it, right? Because what was going on back then that they could create things like that without what we consider modern technology?
Exactly.
Yeah. There's another thing I want to just mention real quick is there's a study in University of Michigan right now. They've been doing the study for a couple of years, and I got to check back in with them. But they've the idea is, what is DMT doing in our body, right? The endogenous DMT that we create in our body. And they always thought it was this minute amount, right? We could never really sense it in the bloodstream. It was very sporadic. So we attributed it to dream states, right? It helps us with our dreams. What they're finding now through this research is that DMT in our body metabolizes super quick. So it's always constant in our bloodstream, but we just can't see it because of how quick it metabolizes. And with on top of that, there's comparable levels of DMT constantly moving through our body, comparable to serotonin, dopamine, cortisol. So all these brain chemicals that we depend on, now we're layering DMT in there as well. So one of the hypotheses they're working with is that the DMT in our body filters the real, quote unquote, natural world to something we as humans can actually decipher and understand. So with that whole conversation we just had about energies being in a different level that we can't perceive, they're probably right next to us, but that endogenous DMT has been built into our body, into our nervous system to help us filter that out so we don't get confused by that because we're not there yet. We just see the physicality of what's in front of us.
Right. And that's part of how things are going to shift, because the perfection of form, or the state of being in its actual design, not just the world that we live in, but ourselves, is something that's of our own creation. And it already exists. And we're just moving through dimensions to get there. And so that might be a scientific or physicalized explanation for how matter is moving itself into these higher dimensions, but that was actually part of it. And so that's a piece, especially for the audience, to keep in mind if they're afraid that we may not get to that place. Because most people in the conscious space now are familiar with the new earth that's coming, and they're ready for it and they want it.
Yeah.
But they're also alarmed at the possibility that the other team or the other force is going to have their way and keep us from getting there. But the angels say that that world already exists, and the other team is actually part of catalyzing us to get there and have actually no power to keep us from getting there.
I love that. It's almost like we've got to do what is perceived as bad, so the people that are perceived as good are like, we're keeping moving, right? This is that push that we need to move towards this other consciousness. And we wouldn't have had that push if we wouldn't, be having school shootings all the fucking time, or anti-LGBTQ or BIPOC ideas, all this ignorance that we have now uncovered that has always been there, but it hasn't been as blaring, as obvious as it thought. Because, for me personally, I was ignorant enough to think we'd gotten past a lot of this stuff, before it all started blowing up. But it's, and as sorrowful as it is to see humanity struggle in this way, it's also, it needs to happen. Right? It needs to happen. We need to show humanity how important it is in all aspects of, not in the male, female, but express yourself, whether it's sexually or physically or emotionally. Right? Get out there and be the human being that you are meant to be, because no one can be Seph like you. Nobody can be an Adam like me. Right? We need the individuality of who we are, because you're going to represent this human body and this spirit in a way that nobody else can, and it needs to be through you, just like it needs to be through me.
Right. And when you do your work with the bulls, and to the audience as well, that when you start to get into a more and more expanded state, pretty soon you forget that you're Adam. Yeah. You forget that you're Seph. And you start to be something that is much more authentic representation of who you really are. And you don't have to remember, you don't have to try to get there. It's what happens when you peel away the layers of illusion. So being the Adam that you are, being the Seph that I am, and it's not even me, you're being Seph too. So even doing that and having an awareness to that, that's one thing. But as soon as that part of the illusion melts away, all of a sudden you get into this awareness that you are that vast entity. And that's something that happens when I do hypnosis, or when I actually am in hypnosis. All of a sudden, this expanded sense of being comes over us. People think hypnosis is mind control. It's not. It's actually a way of connecting with the higher realms through our higher mind. And when we do that, suddenly our heart starts to expand, and we remember, like, oh, you know what? I'm infinite. You know what? Nothing can happen to me. Oh, you know what? I can create whatever solution I need to create to any challenge that I have. Oh, you know what? This is fun. Oh, you know what? This experience in a body is just an adventure. And we recapitulate with that sense of adventure and the wholeness of who we are on an infinite level. And then we could, okay, I'm ready to go back in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Throw me in, coach.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So that was beautiful, that whole just conversation. But what I would love to kind of pivot towards is like, what can we work with as humans, right? With whether we're deep in our spiritual path, have no idea there's a spiritual path in front of us. Like, what are some of the tools that we can work with, or some of the ideas and concepts we can work with as a human to help get ourselves ready, or to be a part of that next chapter?
Well, tapping into the higher mind is the key. Tapping into that expanded state of being is the key. And actually feeling the love in your heart is the key. Now, there are things that we can do, such as when we do meditations with the bulls, or when we do energy work or hypnosis. When we do that, it keeps the part of us that prevents us from being in full awareness. It actually stops it from blocking us. But there are so many different ways that we access that. And the more we access it, and the more deeply we access it, the more frequently we access it, the better. Now, one of the things, of course, is going to happen is that we're going to pay attention immediately to all the negativity that's around us. Because if we're complaining about the price of gas, if we're complaining about how expensive everything is, or the weather today, or whatever, we've gone out of awareness and back into that linear mind. So there are ways that we can figure out how to be in awareness as much as possible. That's why communities of conscious people has become really important. And that's one of the things that I've created online is a community just so that conscious people can connect with other people. And that's an assignment that the angels gave me. And the reason is that we stay engaged in a conversation like this, and all that happens is that we expand into our true nature. And from there, everything that we need just starts to appear. Everything that we need just starts to happen. And we stay in that.
Yeah.
So the key is just to be in that and be in present moment awareness. And when you're in present moment awareness, you're accessing all the power that you have to continue to move forward into a more and more evolved reality. Once the challenging aspect of this reality has actually served its purpose as a catalyst to wake us back up and take us back home, then we don't need those experiences anymore. And that includes diseases, that includes poverty, that includes war, that includes division, that includes all of those things.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily about focusing on, the equalization of the world around us or the separation. That puts us back in our head.
Right.
But this is about genuinely going into love and energy. And because the physicalized world is 99.999999% energy and not a physical world at all, by just feeling love in our heart, then we're communicating with the physicalized world, which is energy. And we were taught, especially as men, not to access that, not to pay attention to that, right? What was that bird with the right wing?
Yep.
Left wing or whatever,
Yep.
the masculine wing. So we were taught to always be logical, always be intelligent, always be practical, and that's the gold standard.
Yep.
Turns out it's the weakest force, right? So what the angels have taught me is that we're meant to actually be in our full awareness while we're in the body. And we have moments of that, of course, like when we're in nature or when we're making love to our significant other or having a delicious piece of chocolate or even a cherry pie, whatever. So we're meant to be in that expanded state as much as possible, because when we do that, we're in alignment and then we're in our true power. And that's where we're going to begin to imagine the new earth. So the less we complain about the old one, the less we feel confined by the old one. And that includes, like I said, complaining about the gas prices or the government policies or whatever. Then we go into that expanded state where we can actually do something about it. And all that something to do is literally just imagine the new earth. Just to visualize or envision the possibility of living in an earth where we are in unity, where we've accessed our power and our magic, and we live in a wonderful reality where we are co-creative with the source, and we create amazing things here. And instead of seeing old tires in the ocean, we live in a reality where everything is one with nature, and we're one with the divine.
Yeah. You had mentioned something in a when I was doing my research, looking into you. It was a podcast you were on. I can't remember which one, but you had said something that it just like the most beautiful awakening slap I've ever received, and it was intuition through imagination. And
oh yeah,
and so for me, I've been working on my intuition for a number of years now, and I feel like I have like a visual clair of some sort, right? I haven't figured it out yet. I'm still like getting bits and pieces of it, but what I find myself doing, and this is when you said that statement, it just put me right back into a meditation. And when I meditate, I find myself in deep visualizations, and I scold myself for that. I'm like, no, get back here, back to your breath, get that thought out of your head. You're back here. And it's not like, oh, what am I going to do after I'm done meditating? I'm going to go like walk the dog. No, it's like I'm thinking about sound baths. I'm thinking about, with the clients I work with, I'm thinking about like what other instruments can I add to this sound experience that I have? And then I'm like, no, get back here, Adam. But when you said what you said, it made me like put another dot in there as to, no, you're visualizing the path that you're going to take, right? This is like your intuition putting a movie in front of you, and you keep dismissing it and pushing it away. Be like, no, Adam, don't look at that imagination. Be here in your humanity. And for now, like, I guess that was maybe 2 days ago. Every time I've sat down maybe 6 or 7 times to meditate from then, I'm like, no, dial into that imagination, bring that picture in, because now, like yesterday, for example, I was sitting down at my closing meditation for the day, and I immediately started thinking about my client today and you. And I'm like, that's exactly what I need to be doing. I'm subconsciously preparing for the next day, right? For the client I'm working with, for the space I can hold, for the beautiful conversation that we're having, for the ideas that come from that. It's like, don't shut that down, right? Lean into that, you know?
Well, first of all, according to the angels, this quote unquote real world that we live in is our imagination to begin with. It's a very elaborate one, and it's one that convinces us that it's real and it's the only one. But every time we imagine, we discount it because it's not part of this imagined reality. Now, I myself personally have dreams where I go back to some place that I simultaneously live in, and I've actually, through hypnosis, discovered that a lot of us do. And remember people, the same people that we see each time when we go to sleep and have a dream, because we actually can live in other dimensions simultaneously because there is no time.
Okay.
But what happens in hypnosis, or in that heightened brainwave state where we're actually in our most expanded state and the linear mind cannot filter what's real from that level, is that we discover that the imaginer and the imaginee are one and the same. So if we're getting messages from our angels and we're one with our angels, it doesn't matter if it feels like we're making it up. The people who have the most successful hypnotherapy, creative visualizations are people who say at the end, it felt like I was making that up. Well, you are the creator and the created. So of course, when you're in that state, it's going to feel like it's initiated by you and your imagination. And that's the part of us that wants to filter that out. But if we don't, and we just allow it to be and to continue to create it, we're going to get the most amazing guidance and the most amazing messages that we could possibly imagine.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And that, yes, you're speaking directly to me, but that spoke directly to me, like in my soul.
Well, remember, we get up from a dream.
Yeah.
Right? First thing I dreamt of a squirrel. Let me look up what that means. So we automatically know that our higher consciousness has access to communicate with us through the screen in the third eye. We automatically know that all the time. We'll go into the shower and we'll get into hypnosis, into a hypnotic state. And when we get there, all of a sudden we imagine or envision a possible solution to a challenge that we're having. We go and we activate that solution, and zoot allures, it works, right?
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Well, how did that happen? Well, that was, of course, our angels speaking to us, that angelic aspect of us speaking to us when it finally could wade through the muddle and get to us because we were in a higher conscious state.
Yeah.
The shower does that, fire does that, the ocean does that, nature does that to us all, whatever.
Yep.
It does it to us naturally, or we could do it through hypnosis. Well, interesting enough, that inner screen in the mind, right away we know. We don't stop and question it. Did I just make that up? The first thing that we realize is that it was an idea that we need to act on. So if we go into hypnosis or a meditation, which that's what it is, it's just a deep state of meditation, and we decide to open up that screen in our mind and let our higher awareness speak to us, our higher awareness is us. Yeah. So of course it's going to feel like we're making it up. But as vivid as we allow ourselves to go is as powerful as the guidance and the messages are going to be.
I love that dichotomy. That's beautiful.
Right. And it's not to be overthought.
Yeah.
It's not to overthink this. But all this is to say is the next time you catch yourself in your imagination and you start to fill in the details, get a notepad and pen and start writing down what you saw, because there's some meaning behind it other than the fact that you just thought it into existence.
Right.
Because the part of us that thinks isn't even capable of that anyway.
Yeah.
The part of us that would imagine that is the part of us that's connected. And we forget that because we've been programmed to be so attached to the matrix here.
Yeah. That we put a lot of value in that
Only
my thought. And
only what's here.
yeah.
That's it. Nothing else.
Yeah.
Creativity can be so vast, but not today.
Yeah. Well, speaking of creativity, you created a tarot deck.
Yes.
And so tarot, and you've worked with tarot many years. That seems like it's a strong modality in your bag. And I've heard you talk a lot about tarot, but you've created this beautiful deck. And so along with the idea of how do we work with our angels, our guides, and the spirits around us. Tarot is one of the things that I found for myself that's been, a nice way to find answers, I Ching, tarot, oracle cards. But this deck that you created is amazing. It's beautiful. The artwork on it is like artwork I've never seen, which is gorgeous. So do you mind taking us kind of through, your deck that you've had here? And maybe we'll do a polling.
Yeah, I'd love to do a polling. So first of all, the one thing about tarot that's misunderstood is it's just part of the art of synchronicity. So one day I was having a stressful day.
Okay.
And I was stressed out about a situation. This was early on communicating with the angels. And someone on the 405 freeway in California, the dreaded 405 in Los Angeles, cut me off, and I had to immediately switch lanes. And by switching lanes, I was behind a great big semi with a message that says, "In God we trust." And that was the way that the angels had to get that message to me, was through the synchronicity of pulling behind that truck with the sign that says that. Well, each card in the tarot has a meaning, and when it comes up through synchronicity, it's the way that the angels can help us, or that we can help ourselves, to decipher what is in our intuition. So I've learned how to work with the angels and utilize tarot as a way of expanding awareness and being in that higher state of consciousness. So the cards aren't doing the work, our intuition is, and the tarot is like a training wheel that gets us in balance with our own intuition, which is why I teach it online as well. So I created this deck, which is an angel tarot deck, and it actually came by magical means. The artists that I collaborated with, there's lots of synchronicity, the angels were there as well. But in this deck, they have angelic images, like you're looking at the Fool card here, where our traveler is being followed by their guardian angel. And you're also looking at the Eight of Wands here in this case, which is about signs and synchronicities. And you can see these cloud-shaped musical notes, which implies all the different ways that the angels can use synchronicity. Now, I just put these out here like that. What a coincidence, right?
Yeah.
That this is here while we're talking about this. But ultimately, I utilize the way that I angelically interpret the tarot, which is still its standard meanings, but with angelic interpretations, and then created a deck around that. So it's a way to connect with the angels. When I created it, the angels said there would be an energetic transmission in the deck. And a lot of people who are intuitively sensitive or energetically sensitive, they get their deck and they're just floored by the energy that comes through here. But it's has to do with the creativity and has to do with the angels. Now, a cool aspect of this that gave me faith along the way is that while I revealed the concepts to the artists that I collaborated with, there were a lot of times where I was revealing something to her that I got from the angels that should go on a particular card, and she was in the middle of drawing it already. And that was just a way that the angels wanted us to know that we weren't actually creating the deck, that we were being used by them to create the deck.
There you go.
So in it is the booklet, which the deck is designed to be used like a regular tarot deck with the tarot spreads. So you have all of the same tarot path. I substitute a few cards, like the Devil is the fear card, the High Priestess is the intuition card, the Death card is the rebirth card, because that's what it really means.
All right, yeah.
So I've taken some of the slightly fear-based aspects out of the deck and angelified them, but they're still in the same place in the path, and you would use it the same way.
Okay.
Because, for example, in the case of the Devil card, it actually does mean fear. So I just changed it to the fear card, which is what it means, instead of calling it the Devil card.
Yeah.
So the booklet that comes with it will actually have an angel message in it. So it can be used as a daily oracle, or it can be used to do regular tarot spreads as well, and to get the angelic message or messages from your angels as you pull a spread. And of course, I teach people how to do that and communicate with their angels using tarot with an online course that I do. So it's a course in a community, and there's a live version of it where I coach people and we do readings and stuff like that. So we work with this card and the what people call the standard deck, which is the Rider-Waite deck. So we work with both decks because there's an overlap between the images that Pamela Coleman Smith used to illustrate that deck, the Rider-Waite deck. She was a very spiritual woman. Yeah. She got overlooked in getting credit for that deck, but she had a very interesting life. But the images that she had created for the cards was a tribute to her spiritual connectivity, for actually creating such a tool for us to access our own intuition. So I actually pulled a spread for the listener here, and I'm going to interpret them so that this is a message for the audience. So one of the things that I hear the angels say is that now is a time of great change for you. And that great change is divinely inspired. This is the hand of God here and the infinity symbol in the Two of Pentacles.
Okay.
And so this is a time of great change, but that change is heavenly orchestrated, is orchestrated from above. So the reason that you're meant to know that from your angels right now is simply because the changes may look scary, but know that you are being watched from above, you're being guided from above, you're being loved from above, and that you are going to be taken through this. The Knight of Cups in this case is literally about something new that's coming in. We're talking about the new earth, but we're also talking about being new earth citizens, and we're talking about a new way of living. Right. So this is about creating something from your newfound power. This means that you're not going to do things the linear way, like the 100 job interviews, the 100 resumes, the 50 interviews. You're going to get an idea and go right to wherever you need to be for whatever it is. And that's your new way of being. Everything that's coming in is coming in from your new access to consciousness. Follow the signs. The Eight of Wands is here as the card that I pulled. These signs and symbols are going to come in many ways, including listening to this podcast and getting this message right now. And we're just going to pull one more, which is all about the Three of Swords, which is about sorrow. Sorrow is a very helpful emotion. It's a very healthy emotion. So if you are feeling a bit of sorrow and regret for what isn't anymore or what you've lost recently, especially as you become this new age human, just understand that you're allowed to grieve it. Let yourself go through that. The people that you've lost recently, anything that is sorrowful in your path that seems to want to eclipse the joy of being ultra connected, experience the sorrow. Don't stuff it. Let it move through you and let it help you move to a new journey.
Yeah. There's an old bell hooks quote that I love. I tell my clients this all the time. It's all emotions are okay, all behaviors are not. And when what you just said, when we can hear the message of our emotion, we don't have to act on it, but just hear it. You know, it's like that child that's like, dad, 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 dad. And you're like, what the fuck do you want? Hi. And then it just runs away. Like, okay, all you needed was my attention, right? That's all our emotions need. They just need to say, hey, I feel this right now, right? do what you want with it, but understand that this is a feeling that we're experiencing, right? Grief, joy, happiness, sorrow, all these things. But we have this tendency to push away sensations, like good, bad, and different sensations, and not sit with those sensations and just get ready for that next thing to come.
They're healing.
Yeah, they are. They really
a lot
are.
of times when I do hypnosis for someone and they're getting a healing, they're going to start to cry. And the cry is releasing that stuck energy, and they want to stop themselves because they're embarrassed to cry in front of me. And I'm like, don't you dare do that. Keep going. You're in a safe space for this. But we hold that space for people to grieve. And what do we usually do when people are experiencing sorrow or grief around us? We actually open our arms. Where do we place them? Right next to our heart. The heart has energy. We place them right next to our heart. And what do we want them to do? We want them to keep on crying until all that needs to be dissolved is dissolved, and it's no longer a limiter for them.
That's beautiful.
Right.
So my favorite things about teaching hot yoga, is people practice yoga a lot that are going through emotional things, right? It's an emotional practice, And a teacher told me this a number of years ago, and I tell my clients or my students this all the time, but hot yoga, you can't tell if it's sweat or tears. Just get in there and release. It could be sweat coming out your eyes, could be tears coming out of your eyes. I don't give a damn. Just get in there and feel it,
Healing incognito.
Exactly right. Yeah. It's interesting as we talk about the new Earth prophecy and the ascension and the way we're moving, and I think the longest running empire that we've had, as far as we know, as far as civilization goes, that we have history of, is been 250 years. And I think the United States, which is one of the biggest superpowers right now, has been around for 246 years. And this current iteration of, right? So it's like 4 more years and we're hitting that mark of when these empires dissolve and blow up because of whatever reason. And I just love the synchronicity of this, right? The new Earth prophecy, the superpowers that need to be looked at because we're not doing things correctly, right? We're not a healthy nation. We're not putting our people in a position to where they can be successful. There's this opportunity for everything to change, and it's almost like we're whether we realize it or not, we're steamrolling towards this impetus of change. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, get on the boat or not, but it's going to happen. Yeah. So, let's all figure this out together.
Yeah. Well, and that holds true for anyone that we believe is not spiritually awake and all that kind of stuff. That's a wonderful way for our ego to kidnap us.
Right.
Right. But everyone that is on this earth has a certain time that they're agreeing or have agreed via soul agreement to actually be awake. Until then, if they're not like what we call awake, which we're not supposed to assess anyway, but if they're not awake in that assessment, it's because they're still learning from whatever it is that's preventing them from being awake. And once they're done with that, then they're going to awaken and join the rest of us. So
yeah, most definitely. I can look back at my path and see how many people tried to shake me awake, and I was like, get fucked. I'm gonna go over here and drink some wine. And then finally one day I'm like, put the wine down and wake up, Adam. Okay, cool. Got it. Understood. My messages were heard, and my lessons to that point were learned. But if I tried to do that when I was 22, you're barking up the wrong tree. I was actually making fun of spiritual people when I was 22 because I had no idea. I was a proud, staunch atheist. Get fucked with your religion, your spirituality. Go feel yourself, right? But, we have to have for me, I had to have that ignorance. I had to have that ignorant moment or those streams of ignorant moments to realize how stupid I sounded to myself and how out of alignment I was living. But again, nobody could tell me that. I had to realize myself.
That is the parable of the prodigal son, isn't it? That is what was meant to be taught. You're always welcome to come back home.
Right.
You're always welcome to come back home and you're loved. And for what we can extract from anything that is in any of those constructs, like organized religion in the Bible, there's so many amazing aspects in there that are revealing. And the prodigal son is literally a parable about how we're always welcome back home to our Creator.
Yeah. There's one, I know we're getting close on time, but one last story I want to really share real quick is an analogy I heard about the Garden of Eden, right? So we have Adam and Eve. Eve convinced Adam to eat the apple. We got banished from the garden. And the person I was listening to was, interpreting this as like, okay, so we missed the message. We got the message messed up as humans. yes, okay, maybe there was some kind of misunderstanding with the perceived apple, the symbology of the apple being eaten or whatever. But from that moment on, Earth has been throwing medicine at us to show us that we've gotten it wrong. Hey, no, you're connected to me. Here's a mushroom to show you were connected to me. Here's a vine and a leaf from two random places in the Amazon, millions of square miles that if you put together, you'll find me again. And this is the recipe to do it. So the world, the earth has been trying to reconnect with us since we misunderstood that message and separated ourselves from the earth. And it's that journey to getting back. And we're constantly being given opportunities from this natural planet, whether it's an energy, whether it's a physical, medicine of some sort, to reconnect and to get back into where we lost ourselves.
True. When I was in film school, and my major in film school was screenwriting, and all stories are written of the character arc of the hero's journey.
Right.
And the hero's journey is actually the embodiment of our journey, not just our individual one, but our collective one. We left our ordinary world, which is the fullness of the universe. We left to go discover something. And while we're here, we overcome so many challenges through accessing our true design or the power that we have within. And there are so many different steps along the hero's journey that represents a spiritual journey. And the earth is just a collective spiritual journey that spans thousands of years or hundreds of years or who knows, 20 years, I don't know.
Right.
But time is an illusion. Yeah. But it's a collective journey, spiritual journey. And there's always a relationship between our individual journey and the collective journey and vice versa. We're not disconnected. And the hero's journey is the template of our journey. And so where we are in all of this is we are somewhere at the end of Act 2 in the 3-act structure.
Okay.
So this is where things are coming together to be resolved and take us into the new world, into the new paradigm, or basically back to stasis.
Yeah.
Now, for the creator, going through this and having this journey is a continual thing, because once we're back there, we're going to do it all over again.
Right.
Because that's the adventure in this, right? And so finding the adventure in it is the way. But always there is a template that's available to us that's in code as well, and that's the storytelling structure that has been a true pattern for storytelling for thousands and thousands of years, which is literally this leaving the ordinary world, overcoming challenges, and achieving our objective.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I found Joseph Campbell's work on that probably maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it just blew my mind.
Yeah.
Every time I watch a movie now or read a book, I'm like, there's Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, just staring you in the face.
But it's always there.
It is.
Yeah, it's not going to get greenlit if it doesn't have it. So
totally.
Yeah.
I actually read something about Star Wars, and George Lucas had written the first 2 screenplays of Star Wars 4 and 5, and then found Joseph Campbell's hero's journey and was like, scrap it, throw it away. We're going back to the drawing board, and rewrote all of Star Wars based off the hero's journey, and now we have the success of Star Wars. Yeah, good stuff. Well, dude, I've been having such a good time talking with you.
Me too.
I really enjoy your approachability to this stuff. Some of these subject matter can be very ethereal and can kind of confuse people, but you have this way of like bringing it to this realistic way of understanding. And you've mentioned a few of the courses that you offer through your website, Talk to My Angels. And so is that kind of one of the better ways to get in touch with you if people want to continue to work with you and learn more about you?
Yeah, go visit my website, which is talktomyangels.com.
Okay.
From there, you can join the community that I've created. That's complimentary access. Come and meet other like minds or like souls. And I create events in there with the angels, various events that I feel drawn to create in there, and get an opportunity to meet and get to know the work a little bit. And you can also order the deck, the Ascension with the Angels Tarot deck from there. You can also join the course and community. It's a monthly membership to make it something that is easy to get into.
Yeah.
So you go in, and with the monthly membership, you get the course, which is a 10 module go at your own pace course with all the meanings of the cards and how to do a spread with the cards. And then with that, you also get access to group coaching with me. And then I have another course that I'm teaching, which is Thrive with the Angels, which is so far a 3-module course teaching how to communicate with the angels constantly, how to access our Akashic records, and how to energize all the practical things in our life, such as abundance and love and health and all of that kind of stuff too. So that's another community that I'm creating as well, which is about giving us access to take that transformation. I'd love to give people the transformation that I've had, which is bringing this into my world, and then all of a sudden life is way more livable that way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And, we need safe space for community right now. Like, that's one of the biggest things I think we're in need of, is people to have places to go where they feel safe and they can explore their humanity and to learn some intuition about themselves, learn something about the neighbor right next to them. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Thank you for doing that.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Seph, thank you again.
Thank you.
You're an amazing human. You are doing amazing work, and I appreciate all that you're doing, man. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes. Thank you.
We'll see you next time, brother. Thank you so much for spending time with Seph and I. Please check out the show notes for ways to get in touch with Seph, to utilize some of the programs that he offers, or to book a session with him personally. As always, please like and subscribe to the show to show your support. Obeisance and love. We'll see y'all next time.